My name is DeWayne Carron. I'm an educator here at Gamble, and we want to welcome you to another segment here from Gamble on Facebook Live. And I know we're on just a minute or so early. We wanted to get on and logged on and give other people a chance to get logged in and tune in. So I think maybe while we have a minute or so here, we might just take you for a little virtual tour of our shop here in New Melly, Missouri. So we are in New Melly. We're just west of St. Louis. My wife and I are long-arm quilters, and since we're sheltered in place here in the Midwest, we've been getting a lot of quilting done here lately. So this is a project Jan has going on the Statler back here. This was pieced by a friend of ours, Chris Vollmer, and I love this quilt. I love the colors in this quilt. It's going to be a very cool little project. So back over here, we have a nice view out of the back of the studio all the time, even in the winter time. The view is very pretty out of the back here. So it's springtime here in the Midwest. The grass is growing and the red buds are starting to bloom, so it looks like it's going to be a very pretty spring day. Over here on the wall we have several different quilts, and for inspiration there's always something hanging up on the design wall waiting for quilt design. These hexies, this quilt top was pieced by a friend of ours, Bonnie Shepherd. This is going to be a very pretty quilt when it's finished. So over here we have our shelf. We have all our thread and some of the rest of our supplies. Down here we have some of our rescue machines. Whenever we're out and we're like at garage sales or a flea market and we find an old sewing machine that looks cool, a lot of times we'll buy it and just rescue it. Usually we don't use them. Most of the time they're just for display, but we find they're really cool. I was cleaning up this one the other day, this big old industrial machine. It's a very old Singer from the 1910s. And I noticed it came with 2 races and 2 bobbin cases and 2 different size bobbins. It had a smaller bobbin and a larger bobbin, which I really couldn't identify. And I thought, how many different styles of bobbins are there? So that brought us to our subject today, which is going to be all about bobbins. So we're going to talk about various bobbins construction, the different classes of bobbins, and generally what just makes a good bobbin. So let's hop right in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the 3 big classes of bobbins, the 3 major leaguers. We're going to talk about the class 15 bobbin here, the L style bobbin, and over here we have the big guy, the M style bobbin. And we talk about these 3 because 90% of all the machines running out there today are going to have one of these 3 bobbins in them. So we'll start with the class 15 bobbin down here. It's been around for quite a while. We see that we find it in this old Singer machine from the late 1940s all the way up to this little brother, which is brand new right here. So the class 15 bobbin is it's about the same diameter as a nickel. It's about 20.3 millimeters thick. And it's been popular for a long time. And if we look at it, we can really see the reason why. It has a fairly large capacity for a bobbin in a domestic machine. And we all know there's never a good time to run out of bobbin thread. It's usually when you're stitching the best seam that you've ever stitched and you look down and you run out of bobbin thread. So this has been a very popular bobbin for a long time. We come over here to the L style bobbin. It is a little bit smaller in width than the class 15 bobbin, But again, it's about the same diameter as a nickel. And we'll find that in a lot of baby locks and brothers, neckies, some FAFs like this nice old machine, and a bunch of Singer machines. So then we come over here to the M-style bobbin. This is the big boy. It's actually larger in diameter than a US quarter. And we'll find it in the large machines. We might occasionally find it in a nulting or a baby lock, but usually this is in the larger long arm machines. And it has a very high capacity because we couldn't possibly have enough bobbin thread in our long arm machines. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about some minor league players here. Right here we have a Class 15J bobbin, which is very similar to the Class 15 bobbin, but it actually has a very slight radius on the side of the walls of the bobbin. So this bobbin may or may not perform well in your Class 15 machine. This is generally found as a very Singer-specific bobbin. So we're going to move on down here. We have the Singer Class 66 bobbin. It's very characteristic. It has curved walls on the side of the bobbin. And this is a really neat little bobbin. And we find it in this very cool old Rocketeer here. That's the user's pet name for this machine. It's really cool. It has this space-age design. It's really neat. I like this machine. And what we see is it has a different kind of rotary hook system in it. And these bobbins are kind of like drop and play. We drop them in there and just close the door and we're ready to go. That's really cool. Here again, that's about the size of a nickel. So you featherweight fans, of course, know that the 221 and her big sister, the 301 back here, use a very specific bobbin and bobbin case. They're a little bit thinner than most domestic bobbins and a little bit larger in diameter than most bobbins that you find in a domestic machine. So we'll move down here. We're going to mention this Bernina bobbin because these machines are very popular with quilters. This is the 011536700 as it's known, but it's very Bernina specific. We find it has this little boss on the end of the axle shaft right here, and also it has this cross-hatched knurled on the barrel of the bobbin itself. Is very characteristic. So we mention that because there are just millions of these machines out there. And then we'll come down here, we'll talk about this Hall of Famer here, this old Singer from the early 1910s. This is a very cool machine, and it actually uses a shuttle and a rotary bobbin right here. And we find one of them even on the bobbin winder on this machine. So this machine uses a shuttle rather than a rotary hook to pick up your top thread as it goes by. This is a very pretty old machine. And these machines are getting popular too. Again, that quilters will put them on a treadle machine and use them without the motor, and it's very peaceful to piece on. Neat old machine. So we've looked at a lot of different bobbins. We talk about construction of bobbins, and I know people have a preference for metal bobbins or plastic bobbins, but does a metal bobbin perform better than a plastic bobbin? Probably not, so long as they are both good quality bobbins. I might want to mention that the metal bobbin is probably going to perform differently than the plastic bobbin strictly because it just weighs more. It's just so much heavier than the plastic bobbin is. So let's talk a little bit about construction in our bobbins. Over here we find several different varieties of the Type M bobbin. We have a very nice solid bronze bobbin that I found in our studio. I have no idea where this came from, but it's really a nice bobbin. We have the genuine gamma bobbin. This is my favorite bobbin to use here in the studio, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We have a very economical steel-plated bobbin right here. We'll talk about him in a minute. This is the solid aluminum bobbin. Usually you see these are pre-wound. Once in a while you'll see an aluminum bobbin for sale, but usually these are pre-wound bobbins. Sometimes you'll find a pre-wind in plastic bobbin as well in the size M. This is a plastic core pre-wound bobbin. It has paper walls on the side. And this bobbin right here is interesting. It's a pre-wound bobbin, and it has a magnetic core. They use this magnet as an anti-backlash device in your bobbin case. So let's talk about these two bobbins right here. This is my favorite bobbin. This is the genuine gamma bobbin, and the reason I like it is it has nice heavy walls on the side that aren't so susceptible to damage, and it's very smooth on the inside, and the walls on the inside and the outside are very straight. So this is a very nice performing bobbin, and you can of course always get that from your gamma dealer. This bobbin, however, is a very economical bobbin, and it has a few issues. Although it's relatively straight, more or less, the walls on the side are very thin. They're more susceptible to damage, and if we really zoom right in right here, we see that these holes are stamped, and the inside of this bobbin is actually rough, and it's going to grab your bobbin thread as you're stitching, and that's going to cause us tension issues. And really, who needs tension issues? So one last thing we want to talk about before we move on here is bobbin tension. Now, I know on a lot of our domestic machines, we really don't have a whole lot of control over the tension that we wind our bobbin. Usually on our domestic machines, the bobbin tensioner is preset. However, a lot of us that long arm have standalone bobbin winders like this, and it does have a tension disc on it, and the bobbin winders on a lot of our machines have tension discs on our bobbin winders on the side of our machines. So why is that important? Well, we don't want to overstretch our thread. We don't want to wind our bobbin too tight with our bobbin winder. We don't want to stretch the thread, and also we don't want to pull the thread down underneath the previous wraps of the thread and make it have to pull out as we're stitching. So we certainly don't want to wind our bobbins too tight, and conversely, we don't want to wind them too loose either, to where the wraps fall over one another and get tangled as we're trying to stitch. So the best way that we can check this and make sure that our bobbins are winding correctly is if we take the side of our spool of thread and we feel how it feels. It's not exactly rock hard, but it's not spongy either. It has a little bit of give to it. So if you press your thumbnail into the side of the spool of thread and feel how that spool feels, and then come over to our bobbin and press our thumbnail into our bobbin, we want to find that it feels much the same way. So in the end, we want to talk about, the best bobbins that work for you. Always use the best bobbin that works for you. Always make sure that you have the correct bobbin for your machine. Always use good quality bobbins, and and watch your tension on your bobbin winder. So that's about all we have for today. Leave your comments at the end here, and we'll field them as soon as we sign off here. We really enjoy bringing you these every day. Catch us every morning at 10:30 a.m. Central Time and 3 p.m. Central Time for another segment. And have a good day, stay safe, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.